So I was thinking through how I would like to share Mom with everybody today and share my thoughts, and I just thought I would share with you some of the letters that I've written to Mom. One of the things that I've been doing has been helping me heal is to actually write my mom letters since she passed. So I've kind of pieced together some of those letters I've written to her to this today. So there is no greater love this side of heaven than the love of a mother for her children. There is little deeper grief than the loss of that original love as it passes back to heaven. My dearest Mom, unconditional love, taught to you through the actions of your father, then shared on to me and others through the endless stories as we sat and talked. You and we talked a lot. We talked as we waited, as you worked, as we drove. You would tell me how Grandpa was the perfect example of unconditional love. He would pour out his acceptance and compassion towards others without any boundaries, without any preconceived expectations. He would correct with gentle guidance. You shared this story as a young girl. You were sent out to the silo to scoop out grain for the cattle. After a little too much time had gone by, Grandpa came out and found you singing. You were pleased with the sound and the echo of your voice as it bounced off those tall walls of the silo. He gently came to you and didn't scold you, didn't reprimand you. He said, "Shirley, that's really pretty, but I think the cows are getting really hungry." That's how Grandpa loved you, and that's how you loved us. I cannot recall one raised word towards me, just a continuous gentle presence of support, an open ear, and a clear conveyance of disappointment when I'd taken things just a little bit too far. The hurt of disappointing you was a pain I never wanted to recreate in myself, so I lived to always feel the knowing of your love and your approval. You and we lived side by side. You talked, I listened. I would ramble on, you would listen. In my younger years, you would tell me stories before I went to bed. As I grew, our talks would carry on late into the night. Never concerned about a bedtime, you would let me tell all that stirred in my head and in my heart, and let that get poured out into your waiting hands. As dementia slowly erased your memories, this was one of the hardest felt losses. We could talk in the moment, but our deep dive conversations, they faded. Now those conversations have grown silent, and that pain is unbearable. Growing up, I watched you take your innate skill of seeing beauty in the broken and turn it into what I think was an empire here in Warrensburg, Missouri. You would search and scour and dig for treasures in all kinds of places. You and I did this for just years together. Whether we were hitting garage sales early to get all the best deals or perusing pallets of lost items in a sort of pirate-like treasure hunt in the literal underground of Kansas City, Missouri. You had this uncanny ability to see something, calculate in your head its hidden potential, throw a bid down, and then spend the next days and weeks prepping and preparing that item for sale. Week in and week out. You taught me to shop the clearance racks and the damaged goods, swinging back around to those same garage sales at the end of the day because those folks would, quote, finally be ready to part with their crap at a reasonable price. God, how I miss those times together with you. You taught me the importance of family and how to stay connected with that family no matter the miles, no matter the distances. We'd travel at least twice a year to set foot on that Iowa soil from which you came, to connect to those people that you loved so very dearly, all so that we would always know your story. To this day, I feel just as much an Iowan as I do a Missourian. We'd take plane trips to wherever Scott and Randy and Steve had moved to recently. I asked you once if you were sad that we all moved away. You said, nah, of course not. I love getting to go out and see where everyone has planted themselves, spend time with them in their environment, see their lives, see what they've made for themselves, meet their friends. We're just a quick plane ride away. You told me that your perfect retirement would be to just travel from one family to the next, just doing those very things. But the greatest lesson you taught me was how to become a mother, how to unconditionally love my own children. When I became a mother for the first time, I began to know you more deeply. We shared something that only a mother knows. It's called original love. That's what I call it. Your original love that covered me multiplied to enfold Matthew and Jacob and Zachary. And my original love was born on those days when those boys were born. My most treasured memories of you are in those early hours and days after my boys were born, when I got to share them with you. And that knowing, that thing in our hearts that we shared in those moments. In the weeks after Jacob was born, you came down to Texas to meet our newest little love. And when you were there, you got a call. Your own mother had just died. Now I just totally feel that pain and that devastation now too. You taught me so much in our time together, Mom. You lived your life, and I took it all in. I lived my life, and you supported me every step of the way. We had such a beautiful relationship. Someone recently told me that the price of great love is a great grief. And I try to remember that as I process the deep pain of your absence. This unbearable hurt is the beauty of a life that was well lived by a person that was immensely loved. And I miss you so much, Mom. There's so much I still need to know. But I will listen, because your spirit is still with me. And even though I feel alone, I know you're still here. Watch over us. Help guide us until our spirits are together again. I love you.
I love my grandma because she was so loving and nice. Whenever we went to her shop, she gave us a free Doritos and chips. And my mom told me before I was born, the doctor said I was most likely to have Down syndrome. My grandma said to my mom, that she would take care of me, but I don't have Down syndrome. But if I did have Down syndrome, and if I did have Down syndrome, it would be difficult on my mom and dad. So my point is, my grandma risked everything she had for me, and I admire that very much. Love you so much with all my heart, Grandma Shirley.
So Anne said it best that moms finds values in things that are broken. This was in the core of her values, and for those that know her, they would agree that that was truly her. They, she could see beyond the cosmetic inconsistencies, the faults, and the broken features to see another purpose and a second life. She was an engineer of a different generation. She could understand that everything had its purpose or its place, and many times we saw this as a hindrance, that she would hold those items in the barns, the garages, and the house. But she would always have a plan. We think of this trait as something that she would only hold on for items of resale. But she saw that in everything, inanimate and living, that it had its purpose. She had a heart of gold. She did not get into the politics of people, but saw the values of each individual. She would help anyone from her family to the customers at her shop. She instilled that trait among all of her 4 children. Her love for her family was truly unconditional. She has great love for all of her family. Her mom, Alice Stevenson, her brothers and sisters, Kathy, Larry, Chuck, and Mary Ann. But her idol was her dad, Charles Stevenson. She worked to instill those values, cherished upon by her dad, into all of her families. Helping those in need, putting family first, having a humble, quiet leadership, but was always very supportive. A true farmer's values. She lived a very full life. She would not want us to shed a tear over, but to celebrate life and enjoy each other. I would like to take a few minutes and reflect on Mom. As growing up, I found myself a frequent visitor to many garage sales and auctions and resale shops. One of Mom's favorite items to buy was a poem called Footprints in the Sand. She was a sucker for that poem, and she had hundreds of them out on the farm, and she would consider to buy every one of them. Footprints in the Sand. One night I had a dream. I dreamed I was walking along the beach with the Lord, and across the sky flashed scenes of my life. For each scene I noticed 2 sets of footprints in the sand. One belonged to me and the other belonged to the Lord. When the last scene of my life flashed before us, I looked back at the footprints in the sand, and I noticed that many times along the path of my life there was only 1 set of footprints. I also noticed that this happened at the very lowest and saddest points of my life. This really bothered me, and I questioned the Lord about it. Lord, you said that once I decided to follow you, you would walk with me all the way. But I have noticed that during the most troublesome times in my life, there is only 1 set of footprints. I don't understand why in times I need you the most, you should leave me. The Lord replied, my precious, precious child, I love you, and I would never, never leave you in times of trial and suffering. When I saw 1 set of footprints, that was the time that I carried you. It had symbolism in so many ways for my mom. She would always read it and question if it was about somebody's passing or this relationship with God, but it was her favorite poem. I reflect back on that, and I don't know what the right answer is to this day. In fact, I don't even think there is a right answer. But it reminds me of a story in the 1990s when Anne, myself, and Mom traveled to visit Scott in Hermosa Beach. Scott had to work and we decided to walk to the beach that day. Mom wanted to walk the Strand to see how far it went. We were told that it would go all the way to a point that we could see from the beach called Palos Verdes. The point didn't look that far away, but in actuality it was 5 to 6 miles away. So both Anne and I walked with my mom down the Strand, on the point, through the beach. She thought that when we got to the end that we would be able to see John Wayne's estate, and figured it would be a quick, fun morning trip. Several hours later, with no water, we realized that we were lost and the only way back was to take a bus. I remember sitting at the bus stop trying to find enough change to get back to Hermosa Beach. We only could muster up a few dollars, and it would not get us all the way back, but it was enough for 3 travelers to get closer. She saved back 25 cents for a call, just in case we needed to have Scott come and pick us up. That adventure was exhaustive, and it was ingrained in my memory forever. It reminded me of the Beverly Hillbillies as we tried to get back to Hermosa Beach. We were definitely a fish out of water in California. At that time, Ann and I would have traded anything not to be on that long walk. But spending that time with my mom and my sister on the beach was exhaustive, but it was something that I always remember and cherish. I look back and I see the last 5 years of my mom here in Michigan as a very difficult time. It was a time to grow with her, but it was a time to support her. It was very difficult to understand the situation of having a child take care of a parent, especially an Alzheimer's parent and a dementia parent at the same time. But I see the symbolism in the poem. So imagine yourself on that beach in Hermosa, walking with mom. The warmth of the sun, the kicking of the sand, her presence is there. You hear her breathing, you look down and you see her shadow. She is there. But with dementia, she's confused, unclear if she's in the right spot, and struggles and is very uneasy. You do everything to keep walking with her in the direction that she has instilled in you. But the role of the child and parent truly is flipped. We adapt, we continue to walk forward, and it's still a very long walk on that beach. We stumbled and tripped often, but we continue to keep walking. Sometimes her footprints were washed away by the surf as she remembered less and less. But her shadow, and her presence is still there. COVID made this a very difficult journey for my mom. Our footprints with my mom may have been a bit more distant due to the pandemic because we could not be there with her. But we continued to walk that path. When mom was moved to the hospital and eventually passed, our footprints stopped and we stumbled and we fell. It was a very difficult time as we could not be there physically for mom, but we were there in spirit. At that time, only one of the footprints stopped. The other set of the footprints staggered for a bit, fell, but eventually they got up and continued to move forward. Reflecting back on that poem, we think of the poem as having only 2 sets of footprints, where one moves forward and another stops and has to be carried on. But as you look rearward at the footprints on that Hermosa Beach strand, you see many footprints of different sizes, shapes, and ages alongside. They are all moving in the same direction and to continue to converge over many miles. All of them have different start times, different end times along the journey, but all of them are moving the same direction, and they were never far apart. They continue together and continue to move forward. Spouses, brothers and sisters, children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews. They've all been walking with her. She was never alone, not even in that hospital. When you look at the many footprints, many of them are similar to Mom's. Many of Mom's values, instilled in her by our family, are still visible in our children and grandchildren. Her presence may not be visible right now in the sand, but her legacy, values live on through her family. This is what Mom would have wanted us to celebrate. A life well lived and a family that continues to walk in the same direction as what she has taught us.
Hi everyone. I wanted to share some thoughts about Grandma. I always remember when we would visit Missouri, a big highlight of our trip would be going to Grandma's shop, and she would take us through and we would look at everything, and then she'd always let us pick something out to take home, and I thought it was really cool to get to spend that time with her and see what she did. I've also been thinking about recently how I'm really thankful she was near us in the past few years, because I got to see her so much more. And it was really awesome getting to hear a bunch of her stories from her childhood, and she has been so funny and just would crack little jokes, and I'd be cracking up and she'd just be snickering, and that's a really good memory I have with her. Also, me and my other grandmother would go and visit her a lot, and we'd do crafts or walk around the grounds and the gardens, and just chatting with her was always so interesting and so fun. So I really miss her, and I love her so much. I wish we had a few more years with her, but I'm happy that she's not in pain anymore, and Grandma, I love you so much. Miss you.
Here we go. I thought I would tape this out in the garage. I don't know why, it feels most like home. I guess I got a lot of stuff from back home out here. Also feels a little cluttered, a little hot, so I guess it's a lot like Missouri summer. So to remember my mom, I wrote a short letter to her that I'll read to you now. And it goes, Dear Mom, I wanted you to know a couple of things I'm sorry about and some things that I feel thanks for. That are really so many things, but here we go. We'll do 5 things. I'll start with one I'm sorry for. I'm sorry when you and Dad came home from a date that you had to see the great macaroni and cheese fight of 1977. I know the walls were covered with macaroni and cheese. Honestly and truly, it was Scott's fault. I hated that you had to chase us out of the house with a wooden spoon. And, you know, in the end of the day, the laundry room looked so much better after it was repainted. Some of the things I'm thankful for. Mom, thank you for the freedom you gave us on the farm. We all learned so much responsibility, hard work, and to love your children. You can see this so clearly on all the great kids you raised and the great kids that they're raising. Mom, thank you for convincing me to be an engineer when I wasn't sure which path to take. You guided me well, and it's truly been a wild ride and a great life for me and my family. Mom, thank you for showing me how to live in the moment and be happy, even when your memory has failed you. You had so many good times and so many memories of the time that you spent here. Thank you for those moments, and thank you for living in the moment. I'll end with one thing with a sorry. I'm so sorry you had to pass away alone in isolation. COVID-19 is a miserable killer. We love you and we'll cherish your memories forever, Mom. Thank you.
Dear Shirley, you are an incredible person, always willing to share your love. We've learned tricks from you, like how to find the valuable amongst what's seemingly invaluable. I love you for the beautiful mother that you've been to your kids and the ever-teaching and loving grandmother you've been to your grandkids. We would not be the families that we are today without your big heart. Aloha nui loa.
Hello, I'm Scott. I'm Shirley's oldest son, and reflecting back on my mom's life, there's several things that really stood out for me as I thought about that. And the first thing is, she never let anything stand in her way of getting it done or doing it. If you didn't have the money to go buy something, then you just made it. Because somebody did, and so if somebody could do it, she could do it. I mean, she made everything. The easy one is she made our clothes. She made all of our clothes when we were younger, and you can look through myself and Randy's and Steve's school portraits over the years, and the same shirt would be handed down, and each of those shirts in those portraits are shirts that she made. I remember once in junior high, when we all had to have PE for a class and we had to have a certain uniform, a white shirt and a red shorts. She didn't want to go buy the shorts, so she just made my gym shorts. And I was so embarrassed because in 7th grade you're embarrassed about sticking out at all. And but I wore those shorts anyway to gym every day throughout the 7th and 8th grade. In fact, I wore those shorts until they literally just fell off my body because they fit so well. But she didn't hesitate to make those shorts. And then even when I was in high school, through one of the youth groups at the Catholic Church, they had planned a trip to go skiing in Colorado that season. And, I wanted to go, so I participated in the youth group, but I didn't have any ski clothes. So my mom made all the ski clothes. She made these thick bib overalls to wear with the fancy straps over the top and all that kind of stuff, and they had all the nice little gadgets and everything like that, and jacket, and I wore it skiing. In fact, I wore it skiing that year, and I wore it skiing the following year as well, and it was actually very, very good, very warm, that's for sure. And then later when I went to college, going to college, you get a bag to put all your books in and carry to class, and everybody had the nice new backpacks or whatever. But my mom made my book bag. She made this nice bag that went over your shoulder, and it had a little board on the bottom, so it wasn't all flimsy. And same thing, I literally used that book bag through all my years in college until it actually just fell apart. I thought that would have been kind of the end of it, but when I graduated college and then went on to move to California, she said, well, since you're moving away, hopefully we'll be traveling back and forth to see each other. She made me a set of luggage. It had like a carry-on bag and then a bag that went underneath, to stow underneath the plane. She made me this very large garment bag where I could put hanging shirts and suits and stuff because, I'm going to work for a company. Obviously, I'm going to wear a suit every day. So she made this beautiful set of luggage. And same thing, I used that luggage forever. I think it's the only set of luggage that I ever had that lasted as long as it did. It was just very well made and it had nice zippers and all the fancy little things to it all. I remember one time also in Salt Lake City when Dad was going to school, Randy and I were saying, hey, we want soda pop. So my mom made some soda pop. I don't know where she got this stuff, but it was a little CO2 cartridge that infused the bubbles into the soft drink, the sugar drink that you would make and shake it up in a can and all that. But, she made that and she made soda pop for us. And even on the farm, I think one of the interesting things that she made is she made soap. And I mean, it sounds silly these days, but I guess back in her days, making soap was just part of how you provided for a family. And so, yeah, when we got on the farm, one of the first things that she made after we got things going was she started making soap for us all. She, just as a reminder, I'm sure we all know this, but this is at an age when there was no internet, there was no Google to Google how do you make soap. She just learned it from others. She learned by talking to other people, and she mostly learned by trial and error, and she just started making it. If it didn't work, then you try it again, and if the clothes didn't fit, you ripped the seam and you started sewing again, and you just kept going until you got it right. I remember also early on too, in the early days of the farm, she was just so industrious. The first few years on the farm, she got involved with a social group that was part of the countryside there. A lot of the ladies from the farms around that area would get together once in a while, and through that social group, I would imagine they just sat around and socialized. But Mom took the steering wheel there and started a food cooperative where she would go buy food in bulk in large quantities for everybody in the social group, in the food cooperative, and then distribute it, according to how much they wanted. So she figured she could get a much better price by buying this food in bulk than going to the grocery store. And so she would do that repeatedly. We were notorious at our house at that time to have this 3 cubic yard bag of corn chips. Always. We always had this tremendous bag of corn chips because she would always over order corn chips. And so, we had corn chips for days. And got the cheese sauce, the carnival cheese sauce that you can get to make it out of powder. She'd buy buckets of that stuff, and we would just eat that stuff until we started turning yellow ourselves. But that was just her way. If there was a cheaper way to do it, to provide for her family, if there was a way to get things that we wouldn't normally have by making it or pulling it together, then that's what she did. And she did it time and time again on so many things. A lot of people recognize my mom's ability to see value in everything. And she was just so creative when it came to looking at things and figuring out what can we use this for? Can it be repurposed? She just had this tremendous ability to open her mind and think about a different way something could be used to help someone or, to provide something for somebody else. It was all about just having this different way to look at things. And she always saw the good in everything. There was very little things that she would call trash. Trash was only something that you just exhausted all possibilities of its purpose. And if you couldn't find anything and it got in the way, then eventually you had to throw it away. But I guess what always struck me when she would go to these sales and go to the garage sales and buy things to be repurposed, she was always doing it for somebody else. It was a lot of times it was her family, but it was her brothers and sisters. It was, her nieces and nephews. It was whoever. And, so many times she would buy things and bring them back. And what struck me most about this is that, she could be at some sale in the far reaches of Johnson County down there in Missouri. And you could, in my case, I was in California, and she would always be thinking of you. She's thinking, hey, so-and-so might like this. So-and-so could use this. I heard so-and-so's doing this, or maybe they could use this in their classroom. Maybe they could use this in their shop, and she would just buy it and try and, get you to use this. Some of the more famous things, I remember one time I was in California, I came back and she had bought this rocking chair for me. It didn't have a rocker on one side, but apparently in some conversation that we had, I told her I wanted a rocking chair, and so she bought this rocking chair. It was only like $1. It was a beautiful oak rocking chair, but it didn't have one of the rockers. And so eventually we found another rocker and glued it on the bottom. And the next thing you know, I'm boxing that thing up and taking it on the plane with me back to California. One of my favorite stories about this is my wife and I, Tina, we went on a honeymoon to Africa after we got married, and it was probably about maybe 10 or 12 months after our trip to Africa, and I'd shown her all the pictures, and I guess she really thought that we were really into African stuff, because about 10 or 12 months afterwards, she had gone to some sale where there was a ton of African masks and little statues and carvings and whatnot. So she bought boxes of these things. And we had already had stuff that we brought back from our trip. But next thing you know, I'm carrying like 6 boxes of African masks that she got at some sale for $3. I think a lot of people might remember a Stevenson family reunion when we all got together, and she brought the gray plastic mugs that everybody could take, and then she brought the markers where we could draw whatever we want on the side, maybe just put our name on there so we didn't get them confused. But she did that all the time for big family events. What can I bring to help everybody enjoy the experience more? And I think it might have been Randy's wedding, where she bought boxes and boxes of these shirts with the American flag on the front. Some of them were gray and some of them were white, and she bought hundreds of these things in all different sizes, so everybody would have a shirt and we could all wear the shirt for the family picture and look real nice. And of course, every time she visited wherever I was, or we would come home and visit with the kids, there was always a little roller bag that she got for 50 cents somewhere. It was chock full of toys, dolls and games and all of them secondhand, and obviously she didn't pay too much for it, but there was always toys for the kids that we would end up dragging back home with us. One of the other kind of fun stories that I remember about my mom is just how she just would take everything in stride, and this is one of my favorite stories. I was a sophomore in high school, and it was in the fall, and I was on the high school football team, and it was a Thursday night, which is the night before the game, and Thursday nights we practiced late in the evening under the lights on the game field. And I was down there practicing, and all of a sudden the principal, who would never be there, starts walking down the hillside to the practice field, and they called my name to come over, and I thought, oh no, what did I do? And he said, well, we just got a call that your mom is in the hospital. She's giving birth. And the hospital was literally right across the street from the high school. It's right there. And the coach said, well, you better go make sure your mom's okay. And if you want to, visit her at the hospital, go. Just leave practice early. But practice was almost at the end anyway. And so when I ran up and started cleaning up, some of the other players on the team were headed up there anyway, and they're like, hey, what did the principal want? I said, well, my mom's giving birth to my sister at the hospital next door, and so I'm going to go over there. And they got all excited, so they wanted to come too. And so by the time we reached the hospital, there's me and like 12 other second string varsity guys behind me that are going to go into the hospital to see my newborn sister. And just as luck would have it, I don't even know, we came in through some side door or something like that, and we walked in through the door literally as Mom is coming out of the delivery room on a bed on a gurney, and she's all sweaty and tired, obviously, and there's the football team standing there ready to greet her, and she saw us all, and she just had this huge smile on her face, and it was pretty cool. To this day, those guys still remember that evening like it happened yesterday, and they remember Ann like it was her own little sister. And my mom just loved that. She loved that happened, and at the time she was laughing even though she looked exhausted, and it was just a precious moment for us all. You know, one of the biggest things, about my mom that I'll never forget is just her unconditional love. When I left when I graduated college and I left to go work in California, I was real excited, and it was kind of a new time. It was a new place, and I got really wrapped up in the moment. But after I was there a little while, my mom visited me, and some of the shine had worn off about the new place, and I was missing my family and missing my brothers and sister. And I talked to her about it, and I said, hey, what should I do? And I said, and she said, well, look, you've got a nice life going here, and it's always been your dream to do some of these things, and our dreams are what we live for. Without dreams, we really aren't taking as much out of life as we can get. And she said, anyway, everybody enjoys having the opportunity to come visit you in California, and it gives us all something new to do. It allows us to be a part of your journey as you go and pursue these things. And we just talk on the phone, and we'll fly. There was never I'm sure she was sad that I wasn't around, but she never shown that. She said, well, we'll just have to talk on the phone. And so for every weekend, for probably a little over 20 years, I talked to my mom on the phone. And there was never nothing but, hey, what's going on your side? Oh, it's so exciting. And she was just so happy that I was out there trying to pursue my dreams and pursue life. And it's funny because, I would never have pictured her for somebody who loved flying an airplane. But over the years, and even the years when I was living in Hawaii, she didn't hesitate to get on the plane to fly out to visit at least once a year. And I know it's a big trip. I've done it myself several times. I know it's hard, and I can imagine her getting on that plane, but I guess she got used to it. She didn't, if she was afraid of flying, she never let anybody know. And then at one point on a family trip to Hawaii, she actually got in a glider and flew around the island on this glider, which I was just blown away that she'd do. She just conquered her fear of flying, and to the point where she really enjoyed it enough to go on that glider ride. And I'll never forget that. I love my mom a lot, and I miss her. She was always there to pick me up, dust me off, and get me back on my feet like nobody ever could. I loved her for all those moments. I would not be the person I am today without her at all. The last thing I'll say about my mom is she did all this with great humility. She never asked for a thank you. She did so many things for others, for myself, for everybody, without expecting anything in return. She never wanted praise. She never wanted to be in the limelight. But she was always such an incredible part of anything that went on with the family. I've always tried to live my life through her inspiration. Through her ability to don't let anything stand in your way, to lean on your own creativity and openness to provide for yourself and for your family. To take everything in stride and with a smile, and to show as much unconditional love as you can to those around you. And above all, to be able to do all that with great humility. And I don't know that I will ever be able to live up to her standard, but I will continue to try. Thank you so much, Mom, for everything that you've given me. And I love you very much. Aloha.
I want to close with this reading. It's from one of my favorite authors. He's a spiritual writer. He was a Catholic priest also. So his name was Henry Nouwen. So listen to these words. I hope they bring comfort to you today. How then do we prepare ourselves for death? By living each day in the full awareness of being children of God, whose love is stronger than death. Speculations and concerns about the final days of our life are useless, but making every day to a celebration of our belovedness as sons and daughters of God will allow us to live our final days, whether short or long, as birthing days. The pains of dying are labor pains, though through them we leave the swoon of this world and are born to the fullness of children of God. So we're challenged once again to look at our lives from above, when indeed Jesus came to offer a full communion with God by making us partakers of his death, where the King himself will serve us. It all seems such an upside-down way of being, but it's the way of Jesus and the way of us to follow. There's nothing morbid about it. To the contrary, it is a joyful vision of life and death. As long as we're in the body, let us care well for our bodies, so that we can bring the joy and peace of God's kingdom to those we meet on our journey. But when the time has come for our dying and death, let us rejoice so we can go home and be united with the one who has called us his beloved. My prayer is that God will just wrap his arms of love and grace and peace around you, that you would sense his presence in a special way. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this day.